ongoing revolution in digital and social media, contemporary marketers and entrepreneurs need help. One form of help resides in the effective integration of analytics with strategic marketing thought. Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Hunter. So money is sort of the third thing that kind of comes into promotions. So how do companies establish budgets? Sometimes it's just affordability. This is sort of all the money that I've got. I'm sort of new. It's a new business, so this is sort of what I've got. They might establish it as a percent of sales, which is very popular in franchises and stuff like that. So if you buy a franchise, you often have to sort of pay out a percent of your sales, and that's kind of a way of establishing it. Competitive parity is basically just looking at your competition, saying, okay, how much are they spending on it? So how do we kind of match and map to that? So objective and task, this is related to a concept called activity-based costing. Have you guys have done some of that activity-based costing stuff? So activity-based costing is where you just kind of go out and you figure out what are all the activities that have to be done. This is sort of like these tasks to accomplish these goals, right, that we need to accomplish. And then we essentially try to account for what's the cost of all those different activities that will need to be conducted, and it's sort of a costing method to figure out what should your budget be, to promote some activity or to promote some product. Okay, so the fourth step is sort of like what message do you want to send? So this is sort of looking at things that we've really talked a lot about, particularly like value proposition. What's your value proposition? What is it you're trying to kind of say in the market? Then the message itself needs to communicate value. So we've talked a bit about sort of communicating value. The marketing concept is sort of this task of looking at how do you deliver customer value profitably. So marketing isn't just sort of a top-line function, right? That's one of the things that you should take away from the class as well, is you're trying to deliver things profitably, right? So how do you sort of kind of achieve a profitable outcome that's associated with it? So one way to think about value is sort of to break value down like this, right? So value will differ across different segments. So I might have a particular feature on a product, right? Features tell, benefits sell. Have you guys heard that one? So this is an old adage. This has been used in marketing and sales and advertising. It's sort of been out there for a long time, right? So features tell, benefits sell. What does that actually mean? So differentiation would be versus your competitors, right? So features there may be different features that a product has. So if I was going to pick like paint, I said durable, right? Durable is sort of one of the things that you talked about, right? So is that a feature or a benefit? Okay, so what are these things about marring and chipping and so on? What are those then? Features or benefits? Okay, so if it's durable, then it's not going to chip, right? Okay, so what's the benefit of not chipping?
Well, you're not going to have to touch up as much. You're not going to have to repaint it.
Okay, if it's durable, I don't have to paint as often. So if I paint my wall, this year I'm good for like how many years? Interior wall, not a kitchen. I know we're going to be
Lifetime.
Lifetime. Always good for.
Nobody goes a lifetime without painting their house again. That's supposed to.
Yeah. Okay, that's very durable then, right? So that's you're sort of maxing out on the lifetime benefit that's associated with that. Okay, so which segments are going to value durability more than others? Who values durability the least, do you think? College kids.
Commercial environments.
Okay, that's sort of what I was thinking. So if I'm selling new homes, durability is not that high, maybe, right? Because I just want it to look good. You move into the house and you're good to go, right? But if I'm actually the homeowner and I think I'm going to stay in that home for some period of time, right, I may value durability more. So this is sort of mapping on what's the feature, what's the benefit, how do different benefits sort of work across different products. And so you can kind of break down things into their features and benefits to try to think about, which of these sort of work in which area. So this idea of thinking about value, you often break it down into points of parity, right? Points of contention and points of difference. So this is sort of the branding thing, right, that you get into. So points of parity are often sort of like where you're equal versus your competition. Points of contention are sort of like, well, you're about equal. There may be some debate that's associated with that. And then points of difference are sort of like where you can clearly demonstrate that your product's going to last for, a lifetime versus the cheap product that's only going to last for long enough for the buyer to get through and sign the paperwork, right? So this is, or maybe a year, right? 2 years. You're going to give them a couple of years on the cheaper paint. Hard to say. Okay, so you're often trying to figure out how do I kind of emphasize these different, how would I think about these in terms of like whether or not those components are relevant or not relevant to different customers. And this helps you to kind of figure out which segments you want to go at. What are your points of parity? What are your points of contention? What are your points of difference? So when you're doing your pitch exercise, this is sort of a good slide to think about in your pitch exercise. That's coming up on Saturday, right? So you're thinking about what are your points of difference? What differentiates you? What is it that sort of is all common, right? What are the points of contention? And you're trying to think about how relevant are these things to your target audience. So you're sort of defining in the pitch exercise. You're defining sort of the job scenario, what you're going after, those types of things. You're trying to say, okay, in this market, this is sort of what's relevant or what's not relevant to that particular market, right? So if you're going to do the pitch exercise up top, how would you do a pitch exercise on yourself? How about a 30-second pitch? Yeah, how would you do that? Based on what I just said.
Me?
Yeah.
You'll find out Saturday.
I'm giving you your shot today, right?
I can't do it right now.
Yeah.
I need more time.
Yeah, so talk me through it then.
Well, what do I do?
Yeah, talk me through how you do that. Yeah.
Well, quick introduction of who I am, my credentials, and how I would fit in with the company.
Okay. So who's your company? Who's your target company? See, I'm sort of helping you with your exercise.
Okay.
Get sort of personal attention. How about that? Without a fee. All bundled pricing.
About Goldman Sachs.
Okay, you're going to go for Goldman Sachs. Okay, so I know a few people at Goldman Sachs. What do they want?
What do they want?
Yeah, what's relevant in terms of skills for Goldman Sachs?
Great work ethic.
Great work ethic. Okay, why do you think they want a great work ethic? That's important to Goldman Sachs.
Well, it's the best company, in your field. So.
Okay, why is it the best company in their field? Why is work ethic? So you think you can work your way into Goldman Sachs? Just work. Sheer work. What else do they want? That's all they want. So why couldn't we all go to Goldman Sachs? We just kind of are willing to work longer hours, right? There's some more stuff. There's more stuff.
I'll polish it off for Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys help me brainstorm. What else does Goldman Sachs want?
They want the brightest minds.
Okay, so intelligence is sort of important, right?
Fresh ideas.
Fresh ideas. So they want some innovative thinking, right? They want some decision making. What else? What else is relevant? See, this is like we're getting your pitch done. They want some experience. What? Yeah, some leadership. What else?
People that can access capital.
Access capital. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff that sort of goes into that. So what is it that makes you sort of different versus the other people who would want a job at Goldman Sachs? These are your points of difference, right? Points of difference, points of contention. How do you sort of rise above the crowd? It's challenging, isn't it, right? You've got some of these skills, though, right? What are they?
It's back on me again?
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about your pitch.
You gotta have great people skills. You gotta have knowledge of the market, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you get thrust into. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's only 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's only 30 seconds. That's why you got to really make it count, right? So but you got to see how you kind of, if you work through this, what you guys know Ross, right? So what is it that's strong about him? What are his points of difference versus the market he's competing with?
Come on, guys.
Looks like it's not the Knowles set, is it?
Is that a great value for his clients, even though it might border on unethical behavior?
So this is, so
not,
you,
not him, but that's how people at Goldman Sachs would,
okay, so, yeah.
would look at on something like that.
Yeah, so they want you to push it to the limit, you think, right? Can you do that? You can do borderline unethical behavior. I don't know if that'll go in your pitch or not. But, so these are the different things that you want to kind of sort through as you're kind of working through your pitch, and you basically are defining who's your target audience, and how do you sort of fit with that target audience. So it's sort of like a totally creative exercise. So you want to emphasize what are your superior points of difference, right? This is basically what you're doing on the marketing side. So the pitch is really just an example of sort of what you would do in a marketing campaign, right? Or what you might do in a marketing promotion, or what you might do in an ad. It's just relevant to sort of, it's more relevant and more personal to you yourself, right? So you're trying to emphasize these points of difference that are kind of high and to the right, that are very important to the market, and of which you have the strongest kind of competitive value, right? And that's sort of the name of the game here. So we've seen this slide before. You're sort of trying to go high to the right there instead of low to the left. And so this slide is just really another one that's kind of getting into what are 5 basic value propositions that you might think about trying to kind of come up with. You know, you're going to offer more benefits at a premium price, right? You're going to offer more benefits for the same price. You might offer the same benefits for a lower price. You might offer less benefits for much less price, or more benefits for less price. So this is just sort of working with the cost benefits ratios and working through how you might think about constructing your value propositions for these different target markets. Okay, so in step 5, this is really a question about media. So as you get into sort of the different media, these are kind of characteristics of these types of media. So advertising is often kind of considered public, pervasive, et cetera. Sales promotion kind of gets into communications, incentives. Public relations is kind of credibility, surprise, dramatization. Personal selling often gets into sort of personal confrontation, cultivation, response. Direct selling is sort of non-public, customized, that sort of a thing. So Goldman Sachs, personal selling or not? What do you think, Ross? Personal selling activity or not? Is there a selling component to that job? Yes, no. No, yes. Is there some selling that's associated with the Goldman Sachs jobs? Yeah. So what's the key then for what makes a good salesperson?
Very persuasive.
Very persuasive. Okay, so understanding sort of persuasion would be sort of important, right? Yeah, understanding sort of what makes someone persuasive. What are some elements that are important to being persuasive that you're really good at? He's a great listener. Okay, very good listener, right? so listing is an important component to selling, right? It's very good. Who came up with that one? It's very good. So you're getting good help now on this stuff, right? So a great listener kind of makes good, because if you listen well, you can kind of understand what your market wants, what the person you're selling to, what they're sort of most interested in. And then if you sort of understand what they're most interested in, it's much easier to sort of cultivate a relationship and to achieve the response you'd like to get from that particular buyer, right? Okay, so when you think about different basic methods of communication, this is sort of the slide I had alluded to earlier, right? If I did a 2x2 that sort of gets into this, paid, unpaid versus personal, impersonal, then you can kind of break down those different elements into that kind of a format. So impersonal and unpaid is really kind of public relations. We've talked a lot about examples of personal that are unpaid. Those are word of mouth or buzz things. Paid and impersonal is sort of advertising or sales promotion. So a sales promotion kind of fits into that same block. And then personal selling is sort of personal and paid. So when you think about these different components, these slides just sort of get into images of these different things. This is Ross right in the background. Get ready to give a pitch. This is, so this is public relations, sort of getting into, communications, mass audience. It's not directly paid for by the company. We did sales promotions earlier, so this is an example of a sales promotion that just sort of says, okay, let's do a cents off coupon. So when I think about sales promotions, that's that. Advertising is sort of any of these that's sort of paid where you can identify the sponsor. So advertising, it could be any sort of thing where it's in a magazine, print, it can be video, all those things that are sort of paid that are designed to kind of go mass communication. This slide sort of just breaks down typical differences to think about when you're looking at these different ones in terms of lead time, cost per contact. The highest, most expensive cost per contact is personal selling. So if you're selling for Goldman Sachs, that's pricey kind of work for them versus doing it through some other means. So you got to kind of go against kind of a higher bar in terms of the cost or the value that you can add to the company. Okay, so different types of advertising goals, task, target, time. So there's basically, when you get into these goals, there's basically 3 of these, right? With 4 blocks. So how can there only be 3 with 4 blocks? What is primary demand? What is sort of developing primary demand or building primary demand first? And then what is building secondary demand? So you definitely do this in pharmacy. Primary demand, yes? Okay, so brand awareness. So primary demand is more about sort of demand for a category. So when I think primary demand, I think Gotten Milk. The Gotten Milk campaign is all about sort of primary demand. The reason it's primary demand is it's sort of trying to develop demand for milk, right? So it's not sort of, at this point, it's not into the brand. So when I get into the brand itself, that's when I'm getting into more selective demand. So selective demand is where you kind of start focusing on a particular brand, right? So then there's also sort of comparison advertising and reminder advertising, right? So these are sort of the different types. So one of these fits into the other. Which one is it? Which one is the special case of the more general case? So what one of these boxes basically would fit into the other, right? So one is a special case of a more general case. What about comparison? What is comparison advertising? What are you trying to achieve with comparison advertising? Comparing one brand to another. That's selective, right? So when you're comparing 2 different brands, that's basically kind of persuasive advertising. So if I'm basically showing you 2 different brands, I'm trying to kind of get you to select one of those, right? Where is comparison advertising at a peak now? In what industry? Politics, absolutely. Politics, big time politics, right? So from politics itself, you can learn a lot about sort of how would you use comparative advertising. That's very relevant to pharmacy, right? So if you're doing comparative advertising now, let's say the incumbent is way ahead. This is probably not the presidential race where it's a closer race, but if you have a different race where the incumbent is way ahead of the challenger, right? Who wants to use comparative advertising and who doesn't? The challenger usually wants to do what? Comparative advertising. Why? Okay, so a lot of times.
Got the brand awareness, they've already got market share.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're the incumbent who's way ahead and you do comparative advertising, what does that accomplish?
You compare yourself to somebody that's ahead.
You could. Yeah. Let's say it's a 2-person race. You compare to somebody lower. Then what happens?
Yeah, you're defeating yourself.
You're defeating yourself because you're sort of building awareness for that competitor, right? So this comparative advertising, when you're at the top of the race, is usually not a good option, right? Because you're sort of like helping the other person promote themselves. You're investing kind of in that other individual, right? Yes, Jeremy.
You see a lot of that when I go to Walgreens and when I want to get cold medicine. This is compared to the ingredients to like the top player in that market. It's like the same stuff, but it's like $5 cheaper.
Okay, so that's a good example. So a lot of times that's sort of the private labels have been doing that for years, right? They want to sort of locate closest to whatever the driver is within a particular category, and they want you to sort of compare their product to that driver in the category. So that's good. That's basically sort of the way to think about the different types of brands, and you'll make choices on how much you're spending on sort of primary demand, how much you're spending on the selective demand or secondary demand. Yes.
Quick question on primary. Does that mean you're not advertising your brand, you're just advertising
The category.
the
Yeah.
category? Does that
Yes.
happen a lot?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It happens a lot, particularly when there's sort of a dominant brand in a particular category, right? So if a brand is sort of like totally dominant, they might sort of just promote that category, right? So that's sort of this is when you're way ahead. That sort of is where you see more primary demand advertising from leaders in a particular market. Yes.
But aside from milk, I mean, are there other examples of that?
If you're Microsoft, what do you promote? Computers, PCs, right? So if you use PCs, right? That's very much kind of because if you use a PC, there's a good chance you use Windows, right? See, so this is sort of these are dominant players. So think a lot of times about on that question, think about what's a dominant player, and then think, okay, is that dominant player sort of just trying to come up with new ways to use new products or to use their product itself, right? So P&G will do this with like Tide laundry detergent, right? This is sort of a dominant player in the laundry detergent market. So if you're just trying to promote, kind of use laundry detergent, this is often you're trying to come up with new uses and other ways to sort of use detergent that maybe people wouldn't think of, right? So that's sort of a typical kind of primary demand. Selective demand then is often sort of as you move down into other brands and stuff like that. All the best with your efforts to master marketing and sales. I'm Gary Hunter, and I hope you have a great day.